Hey everyone, and welcome back to Horror Movies for Life YouTube channel, and welcome to this 1982 horror movie review video. So I thought I'd sneak one more in before the end of the month here. So we're on the very last day, August 31st. Happy Labor Day weekend, to everybody that celebrates here in the U.S. or around the world. But yeah, the movie we're going to take a look at today is one that I do have the physical media for. Actually have a Blu-ray DVD combo, Scream Factory edition, and that movie is Death Valley from 1982, a slasher movie per se. But yeah, Death Valley. Let's go ahead and talk about Death Valley from 1982. So Death Valley is a 1982 American slasher film directed by Dick Richards, written by Richard Rothstein, and starring Paul Le Mat, Catherine Hicks, Stephen McHattie, Wilford Brimley, Peter Billingsley, and Edward Herrmann. Its plot focuses on a young boy who accompanies his mother and her new boyfriend on a road trip through the Death Valley National Park, where they are unwittingly targeted by a serial killer. So the movie opens, Paul Stanton, a Princeton University professor, has separated from his wife Sally, who has rekindled a romance with her high school sweetheart Mike. The couple's son Billy reluctantly accompanies Sally on a trip from New York City back to her hometown of Phoenix, Arizona, to meet Mike and embark on a road trip to California. Tensions abound between Mike and the precarious Billy, despite Sally's attempts to forge a connection between the two. As the group embark on a barren stretch of road in Death Valley, Billy notices a weathered gold Cadillac Series 62 pass them by. While visiting an abandoned mining site further down the highway, Billy unknowingly stumbles upon an RV where three young people have just been murdered. Billy fails to notice the Cadillac parked nearby and absconds with a unique gold frog pendant he finds in the RV. Basically steals a unique frog pendant that he finds in the RV. So that's the setup, the premise, the beginning of Death Valley. As far as the cast goes, we have Paul Le Mat as Mike, Catherine Hicks as Sally, Stephen McHattie as Hal, Wilford Brimley as Sheriff, Peter Billingsley as Billy, and Edward Herrmann as Paul Stanton. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast of the 1982 slasher movie Death Valley. This is a pretty decent movie, I would say. Not a great slasher movie, especially if you're a Friday the 13th or Burning kind of slasher fan. This is a different kind of slasher. It does have slasher elements in it for sure, so I can see why it's considered a slasher, but it's a movie that tries to be a little bit more than your typical slasher, especially during this time. So let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I liked about Death Valley. And I think you have to start with the three main characters, this little family unit, even though they're not a family yet. But Catherine Hicks, her boyfriend, Paul Le Mat, who plays Mike. Catherine Hicks plays Sally, and then of course Peter Billingsley, fucking Ralphie, plays Billy here. And I think all three of them do a really good job. And I think part of the reason they do a really good job in their roles is because they're very well written characters, which this is the first stray away from typical slasher movies during that time. Because usually they just throw bodies at the camera in something like Friday the 13th or The Burning. It's all about the body count. It's all about the blood. And this movie's not really like that. They actually put the effort and the time into these characters, these main characters especially. So, yeah, I thought the three main characters were really well written and well acted, led by Peter Billingsley, who fucking Ralphie from A Christmas Story, of course. Now, this is a couple years before this, and you can tell he's quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, but he's a couple years younger than he was in A Christmas Story. But I thought Peter Billingsley does a good job, especially for being, 8, 9 tops in this movie. And he kind of has to carry the movie. We kind of see most of the movie through his eyes. And for a young child actor, I thought he does a good job of carrying the movie. And obviously supported really well by Catherine Hicks, who we know mostly as the mother, Andy's mom from Child's Play, the first movie, as well as Seventh Heaven, taking it out of the horror realm. And then Paul Le Mat, I didn't really know exactly who that actor was until I saw his face for a while, and then I realized, oh, I've seen him before. He's been in a lot of different things, but I actually know him best from The Night They Saved Christmas. He plays the husband, the father, Mike. but he's got a beard in that movie. He doesn't here, and obviously that's not a horror movie; it's a Christmas movie. But he's been in a lot of other things too. And but both Paul Le Mat and Catherine Hicks are very good in their roles here, along with Ralphie. Or Peter Billingsley, as he's actually known in real life. And I also thought there was really good chemistry between the three of them, very believable in terms of their relationships, as far as where they start from, and then because of the experiences and what happens in this movie, kind of where they go in the arc of those relationships, I thought was very well done. And again, these are things that you don't often get in a slasher movie from the early 80s. And so that's something that very much stands out as a positive, that it tries to be more than that. And on that note, it does try to be more than a standard hack and slash high body count slasher movie. It tries, and I think mostly succeeds, to say much more. Also, the story has more intelligence behind it. Say much more in terms of what I was talking about with those three characters, their relationships, how they develop based on the horror aspect of what happens in this movie with the serial killer and stuff. And yeah, so from that standpoint, if you're just somebody that enjoys a horror movie and you're looking to see that it's a slasher movie, and you're kind of like, the old hack and slash. That's not really what this movie is. There are deaths in the movie. There's only 5, though. There's a lot more intelligence and good acting, good directing. There's just a lot more that was put into this movie than you'd get in a typical low-budget slasher movie. So just kind of know that going in. That it is more than that. The score and the music used is very effective in this movie. Very suspenseful kind of music that really works and is very appropriate for this kind of horror movie. The setting, I think, is really fun and unique as well, being set mostly out in Death Valley, the desert background, especially when they're like on the more like barren highways in the desert. That's great horror to me. That's a great horror setting. Those are my favorite scenes in the movie, frankly. I think it's very effective for a horror slasher movie, and it's different as well. You know, it's not on a college campus or in a woods, which there's hundreds of those kind of slasher horror movies. So I like the fact that it was a bit unique and a bit different. There's also a twist in this movie at the end when it relates to who's doing this. I'm not going to say it's the greatest twist ever invented. You can kind of see it coming if you pay attention, but it's still interesting, and it extends the movie in a few more minutes that I don't think is detrimental to the overall movie. It's kind of a fun twist, I would say. So that's another thing I'll add, is sort of a pro, or more on the mix side, but still more on the pro side. As far as cons go for Death Valley, the look of the blood that's used here is awful. It's that pink and orange kind of combination, melted red crayon blood that doesn't look anything like real blood. So that's something that I'm not going to say it takes me out of the movie, because like I said, there's only 5 kills in the movie, and they only show blood maybe like a minute or 2 on screen total, maybe 1 to 5 minutes, something like that. But when you see it, it's terrible. It reminds me of the old Giallo films, but it's even worse than that. I think it's even got more of a tint of pink in it. So I'm not a big fan of the blood used here. The first half of the movie is a lot more character dialogue scenes and story background and setup, character setup. Not a lot of action. To be honest with you, I actually watched this movie twice. I watched it yesterday afternoon first, and I dozed off a couple times during it, but it's not really the movie's fault. I was coming off a night of a lack of sleep, and then I played a round of golf too when I came home, and then I put this on. So I had to give it a second chance and rewatch it again last night, which obviously I stayed awake for it, and a much better experience there. But still, even with that, I would say until you get to about the 45-minute mark of the movie, it's slow moving. It's a slow burn for sure. A lot more drama and character driven than any like sort of horror slasher elements, I would say. So yeah, there's that. There are only a total of 5 kills in the movie, and none of them are particularly memorable or all that well done in terms of the effects. I already touched on the blood, but there's basically a lot of throat slashes and a pick to the axe, or a pickaxe to the chest, I should say, and one of the characters. And again, this isn't a movie you're going to watch for the body count. You're not going to watch it for the kills or the gore. or the nudity. There's one scene of nudity, basically, like about 35 minutes in, I would say, having to do with the RV and the three people that are killed within it. But it's not, that's where it's not a typical slasher, so you kind of have to know that going in. But if you are somebody that wants a typical slasher, this movie's probably not going to be for you, because as I said, it doesn't have the best effects. It doesn't, and the kills aren't memorable. They're just kind of there. It's part of the overall story, which, like I said, has a lot more intelligence in it. There's definitely some added filler scenes, I should say, that give the movie some pacing problems. Like at one point, Peter Billingsley's character of Billy is watched by an overweight babysitter, and she's staring at his candy in this motel room that she's watching him in. His Catherine Hicks and Paul Lamette's characters goes out on a date or something. And then, I mean, they spend like 3 or 4 minutes her just staring at the candy and asking if he's going to eat that, and it's just filler. You can tell that this movie didn't have. It's an 88-minute movie with probably about 75 minutes of actual script. So they had to do the filler stuff to try to get it towards that 90-minute mark at least. And so the pacing isn't great. I talked about like the first 30 to 40 minutes of the movie being kind of slow paced and set up. But it is much more action packed towards the end of the movie. And I did enjoy the last 25 minutes or so of the movie. A lot of chasing, a lot of suspense. So overall, guys, this movie's fine. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I would classify it as a better horror movie than as what we know as a slasher movie. But it's still fine as a slasher movie. But 7 out of 10 overall for Death Valley from 1982. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen this movie, your thoughts on it. Do you like it? Do you not? Comment down below. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It would really help me out for the future of my channel and the horror content that I can provide. So with all that being said, thank you guys for watching again. I hope everybody's having a great and safe and fun Labor Day weekend. But as always, as we get into fall and September 1st tomorrow, stay scared. Bye.